Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Ranger and watched the stars through the main screen. His crew had been traveling for 3 weeks through empty space near the Veil Nebula. This was supposed to be a simple survey mission, to map new star systems for Earth's growing space program. Jake was tired and ready to go home. Chief Science Officer Lisa Grant looked up from her station with excitement in her eyes. "Commander, I'm picking up some strange energy readings from the Kepler 442 system ahead." Jake walked over to her console and studied the data. The readings showed patterns that didn't match natural phenomena. "Are you sure these aren't just solar flares or magnetic storms?" Lisa shook her head. "No, sir. These patterns are too regular and too complex. This looks artificial to me. Something made by intelligent beings." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Finding signs of alien technology was rare and dangerous. Most of the galaxy was controlled by hostile species that didn't welcome human visitors. Jake had to decide whether to investigate or report back to Earth Command. "Set course for the outer asteroid field," Jake ordered. "But keep our shields up and weapons ready." The USS Ranger moved carefully through the rocky debris that orbited the dead system. The energy readings grew stronger as they approached a cluster of large asteroids. Navigation Officer Pete Johnson guided the ship between the floating rocks with skill. "Commander," Lisa called out, "the energy source is definitely coming from inside that big asteroid cluster. But I'm not detecting any artificial structures." Jake studied the tactical display. Something was hiding in those rocks, but his sensors couldn't see through whatever was blocking their scans. "Launch a probe and see if we can get better readings." The probe flew toward the asteroid cluster and suddenly vanished from their screens. Not destroyed or damaged, just gone as if it never existed. The crew stared at their instruments in confusion. "What happened to our probe?" Jake asked. "I don't know, sir," Pete replied. "One second it was there, the next it just disappeared." Lisa ran more scans and found something incredible. "Commander, I think there's some kind of cloaking field around those asteroids. Our probe didn't get destroyed, it just passed through an invisible barrier." Jake made another difficult choice. "Take us in slowly. If this is a trap, we need to be ready to run." The USS Ranger moved forward until the space around them began to shimmer like heat waves. Then suddenly they could see what had been hidden. A massive space station sat nestled between the asteroids, its design unlike anything humans had ever seen. The structure seemed to be made of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. "My God," Lisa whispered. "Look at the size of that thing." The station was easily 10 times larger than Earth's biggest space dock. Crystal spires twisted upward from a central hub, and energy flowed through transparent tubes that connected different sections. It was beautiful and alien at the same time. Jake opened communication channels. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel USS Ranger. Please identify yourself." For a moment there was only silence. Then a voice came through their speakers, but it wasn't like any voice they had heard before. It sounded like music mixed with words, like someone singing and talking at the same time. "Greetings, travelers from the small blue world. I am Elder Resonance Zethhai of the Kithara. You are the first friendly visitors we have seen in many cycles." Jake exchanged looks with his crew. The aliens' English was perfect, but the way they spoke was strange and musical. "We come in peace, Elder Zethhai. May we request permission to dock? You may approach, but be careful. The great hunters may be watching." The USS Ranger moved toward the crystal station and found a docking port that somehow adjusted itself to fit their ship. Jake took Lisa and 2 security guards with him to meet these mysterious aliens. They walked through an airlock that filled with breathable atmosphere. The inside of the station was even more amazing than the outside. Everything was made of living crystal that pulsed with gentle light. The corridors were smooth and curved, like they had grown rather than been built. Musical sounds echoed through the air, creating a peaceful feeling. Elder Zethhai waited for them in a large chamber filled with other Kithara. Jake had never seen beings like them before. They were tall and thin, with skin that looked like translucent crystal. Light moved through their bodies like blood, and when they spoke, their voices created harmony together. "Welcome to Haven Station, humans of Earth," Zethhai said with sadness in their musical voice. We are all that remains of our people, Jake sat down on a crystal chair that formed itself to fit his body. What happened to your people? Elder HFY's light dimmed as they began their sad story. Long ago, the Cathara lived on many worlds throughout this sector of space. We were healers and teachers, sharing our knowledge with all who asked. Our crystal cities sang with life and joy. Lisa leaned forward with interest. You were healers. Yes. Young scientist. Our people could mend broken bodies and sick minds using the power of harmonic resonance. We helped thousands of species recover from diseases and injuries. We brought peace to wars and wisdom to the confused. What changed? Jake asked. HFY's voice became darker. The Hegemony Coalition came. 4 warlike species joined together to conquer and control. The Vorthak led them with their hunger for power. The Saurian provided their war machines. The Nexari gave them their cold intelligence. The Bloodfang brought their cruelty. The Elder paused, and other Cathara joined their voices in a mournful song. They said our healing ways made other species weak and dependent. They claimed the galaxy needed strength, not compassion. They gave us a choice: serve them or die. Jake felt anger building in his chest. And when you refused, they destroyed our homeworld and scattered our fleets. They hunted us across the stars like animals. Most of our people were killed or captured. Only a few thousand escaped to hidden places like this station, Lisa asked. How long have you been hiding here? 300 of your years. We are the last free Cathara in the known galaxy. Our children grow up in exile, never seeing sunlight or breathing natural air. Jake stood up and walked to a crystal window that showed the asteroid field outside. He thought about Earth and humanity's place in this dangerous galaxy. His people were still new to space travel and had no idea such terrible things were happening among the stars. The Coalition still hunts you, he asked. Always. They cannot rest while any of us remain free. They fear that someday we might inspire other species to remember compassion and resist their rule. Suddenly alarms began ringing throughout the station. A young Cathara rushed into the chamber and spoke rapidly in their musical language. HFY's light flashed with fear. What's wrong? Jake demanded. Coalition ships have entered the system, 3 heavy cruisers and a battle carrier. They must have followed your ship's trail. Jake felt his heart sink. His decision to investigate had led the enemy right to these peaceful people. How long before they find us? The cloaking field will hide us for a short time, but their scanners are powerful. When they find us, they will destroy this station and everyone aboard. Jake grabbed his communicator. Morrison to USS Ranger. Red, alert. Coalition forces in the system. His first officer's voice crackled back. Confirmed, sir. 4 large ships moving in fast. What are your orders? Jake looked at Elder HFY and the other Cathara. These gentle beings had suffered enough. Earth had always taught that humanity should help those who couldn't help themselves. The Coalition might be powerful, but they had never faced human determination before. Prepare for battle, Jake ordered. We're not leaving these people to die. Elder HFY's light brightened with surprise. Commander Morrison, your single ship cannot fight 4 Coalition vessels. You will only die with us. Jake smiled grimly. Maybe, Elder. But my species has, a saying, sometimes you have to draw a line and make a stand, no matter what the cost. The emergency session of the United Terran Council met in the Great Dome Chamber on Earth. President Helen Burke sat at the head table while military leaders and politicians argued loudly about humanity's response to the Cathara situation. Commander Jake Morrison had sent his report 3 days ago, and the debate had been fierce ever since. Admiral Patricia Cross stood and addressed the assembly. We cannot ignore what's happening out there. The Cathara are being hunted to extinction by this Hegemony Coalition. As representatives of Earth, we have a duty to help innocent people. Defense Secretary Ron Palmer shook his head angrily. Admiral Cross, you're talking about going to war with an alliance that controls 40 star systems. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their fleets could destroy every human colony in a month. So we should just let genocide happen. Admiral Cross shot back. Is that what humanity stands for now? President Burke raised her hand for silence. The chamber grew quiet as all eyes turned to her. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her voice carried the weight of Earth's 6 billion people. "I've read Commander Morrison's report many times," she began. "These Kithara spent centuries helping other species, healing the sick and teaching peace. Now they hide in exile while their children grow up never seeing sunlight." Secretary Palmer leaned forward. "Madam President, I understand your feelings, but we must think practically. The Coalition has been expanding for hundreds of years. They have battle-tested fleets and weapons we can barely imagine. If we interfere, they'll simply add humanity to their list of conquered species." "Perhaps," President Burke replied. "But my grandfather told me stories about the old wars on Earth. He said good people stood by and did nothing while evil men destroyed entire populations. He made me promise that if I ever had the power to stop such things, I would act." Senator Carl Hayes from the Mars colony spoke up. "Madam President, even if we wanted to help, how could we? Our entire fleet consists of maybe 200 ships. The Coalition reportedly has thousands." Admiral Cross pulled up a holographic display showing human space. "We may not have large fleets, but we have advantages they don't expect. Human ships are fast and maneuverable. Our crews are trained for independent thinking, not just following orders. Most importantly, we'll be fighting for something we believe in." "That's not enough," Secretary Palmer insisted. "Belief doesn't stop antimatter torpedoes or plasma cannons. We'll be sending our people to die for strangers we barely know." President Burke stood and walked to the great window overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Ships from every human colony were visible in orbit, crews waiting for orders that would determine their fate. "Secretary Palmer, let me ask you something. What makes us human?" The question surprised him. "I'm sorry, Madam President. What separates us from animals or machines? What makes humanity worth preserving among the stars?" Palmer thought for a moment. "Our intelligence, our technology, our ability to adapt." President Burke turned back to face the assembly. "Those are tools, not values. I believe what makes us human is our capacity for compassion, even when it costs us something. The Kithara dedicated their entire civilization to healing others. Now when they need help, should we calculate the risks and walk away?" The chamber erupted in argument again. Voices rose as politicians and military officers debated the future of human space policy. Some demanded immediate action, while others warned of certain destruction. Admiral Cross called for attention. "I have a message from Commander Morrison. The Coalition has issued an ultimatum." The room fell silent as she read from her communication pad. "Supreme War Leader Threxnal of the Vorthak demands that all human ships withdraw from Kithara space immediately. Any vessels found protecting the crystal dwellers will be destroyed without warning. The humans have 48 hours to comply." Senator Hayes laughed bitterly. "Crystal dwellers. They don't even use the Kithara's real name." "The message continues," Admiral Cross said. "The Coalition warns that humanity is a young and foolish species that doesn't understand galactic realities. They offer to spare our colonies if we abandon the Kithara and accept Coalition authority over human expansion." Angry shouts filled the chamber. No one liked being threatened, even by a superior force. President Burke let the noise continue for several minutes before calling for order. "So, there it is," she announced. "The Coalition wants us to abandon innocent people and bow to their authority. They're treating us like children who need to learn their place in the galaxy." Secretary Palmer made one last attempt. "Madam President, maybe we should consider their offer. We could negotiate some kind of agreement that protects both humanity and the Kithara." "You want to negotiate with genocidal conquerors?" Admiral Cross asked. "What could we possibly offer them that they can't simply take by force?" President Burke returned to her seat and looked at each council member in turn. "I've made my decision. The Coalition sees us as just another weak species to be controlled or eliminated. But they're wrong about humanity." She activated the chamber's main display, showing images from Commander Morrison's encounter with the Kithara. The crystal beings looked fragile and peaceful as they tended to their hidden station. These people spent 3 centuries helping others and asking nothing in return. Now they're almost extinct because they chose compassion over conquest. If we abandon them, what does that say about human values? The president stood again, and her voice grew stronger. "I refuse to let humanity's first major act in galactic politics be an act of cowardice. The Coalition thinks we're soft because We haven't conquered our neighbors. They think we're weak because we prefer cooperation to domination. They're about to learn how wrong they are. She looked directly at Admiral Cross. Admiral, you have authorization to deploy the entire human fleet to protect Cathara refugees wherever they may be found. If the Coalition wants a war, they'll have one. The chamber erupted in both cheers and protests. Some council members applauded the decision, while others warned of disaster. Secretary Palmer gathered his papers and left without another word. Admiral Cross smiled grimly. Madam President, I'll need to recall ships from every colony. It'll leave our outer settlements vulnerable. Do it. And Admiral, send a message to this war leader Threxnell. Tell him that humanity draws the line here. We won't retreat, we won't negotiate, and we won't abandon innocent people to his ambition. 3 days later, the Coalition response came in the form of a massive attack on human positions near Kepler's Edge. Captain Danny Roberts commanded the USS Defiant, a fast cruiser escorting 2 Cathara refugee ships toward a hidden sanctuary. His sensors detected incoming Coalition vessels while they were still hours away from safety. Captain, his tactical officer called out, I count 12 enemy ships approaching fast, heavy cruisers and battle destroyers. Captain Roberts studied his options. The Cathara ships were slow and couldn't fight. His own vessel was outgunned 10-1. Standard military doctrine said to retreat and preserve his ship for future battles. Sir, his communications officer interrupted. I'm receiving a message from Captain Amy Foster on the USS Justice. She's 40 minutes away with 2 more escort ships. Roberts made his choice. Signal Captain Foster that we're holding position. Tell the Cathara ships to continue toward the sanctuary at maximum speed. His first officer looked worried. Captain, we can't fight 12 Coalition ships alone. We're not alone, Roberts replied, watching the refugee ships on his screen. We have something worth fighting for. The Battle of Kepler's Edge lasted 6 hours. The USS Defiant and USS Justice fought desperately against overwhelming odds, using hit-and-run tactics and superior maneuverability to avoid being surrounded. When Coalition reinforcements arrived, it looked like the human ships were doomed. But then more human vessels appeared from 3 different directions. Admiral Cross had positioned reserve fleets throughout the sector, ready to respond when the Coalition made their move. The enemy found themselves facing not 2 human ships, but 20. The Coalition fleet retreated after losing 4 vessels, but not before broadcasting a message across all frequencies. War Leader. Threxnell's harsh voice declared that humanity had chosen their fate by interfering with Coalition business. President Burke received the message in her office and smiled. She opened a channel to all human colonies and ships throughout space. Citizens of Earth and her colonies, today we fought our first battle against the Hegemony Coalition. We won not because we were stronger, but because we refused to let innocent people suffer while we stood by and watched. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when you threaten something humanity chooses to protect. 6 months into the war, humanity was losing badly. Coalition fleets swept through human space like a deadly tide, overwhelming colony defenses and forcing evacuations on 12 worlds. Governor Kevin Stone stood on the observation deck of New Pittsburgh's main government building and watched enemy dropships descending through the orange sky. Sir, we need to get you to the evacuation shuttles, his aide urged, but Kevin shook his head. I'm not leaving my people to face this alone. The industrial colony of New Pittsburgh had 20 million residents who couldn't all be evacuated in time. Coalition ground forces were landing in 3 sectors, their war machines advancing toward the main cities. Kevin had made the hard choice to stay and organize resistance efforts. His communication device crackled with reports from across the planet. Governor, this is Colonel Brad Martinez at Firebase 7. Enemy forces are advancing on our position with heavy armor support. We can hold for maybe 2 hours. Kevin studied the tactical display showing red markers spreading across the continent. Colonel, pull your forces back to the factory district. Use the industrial complexes for cover and make them fight for every building. The Coalition had superior technology and numbers, but they weren't used to fighting determined defenders who knew their own territory. Human resistance groups had spent months preparing for this moment, turning entire cities into defensive networks. Commander Lucy Martinez, Colonel Brad's sister, led a small fleet of converted civilian ships from an asteroid base in the outer system. Her vessels weren't military grade, but they were fast and unpredictable. She specialized in hitting coalition supply convoys and disappearing before enemy reinforcements could respond. "This is Ghost Leader to all Ghost units," Lucy transmitted to her ragtag fleet. "Coalition supply convoy heading toward New Pittsburgh along Shipping Lane 7. 12 cargo ships with 4 destroyer escorts." Her ships moved through space like pirates, using stealth and speed instead of heavy weapons. They struck fast and hard, destroying supply ships loaded with ammunition and equipment meant for the ground assault. Every successful raid meant coalition forces on the planet had less support. Back on New Pittsburgh, the street fighting was brutal. Coalition soldiers were experienced and well-equipped, but they found human defenders fighting with desperate creativity. Factory workers turned industrial equipment into weapons. Engineers rigged building systems to create deadly traps. Ordinary. Citizens picked up rifles and refused to give ground. Kevin coordinated the defense from a bunker beneath the city center. Reports came in from all sectors showing the same pattern. Coalition forces advanced quickly at first, then got bogged down in urban warfare that their training hadn't prepared them for. "Governor," his military advisor reported, "enemy casualties are running much higher than they expected. Their commanders are requesting additional ground forces." That was good news, but Kevin knew it wouldn't last. The coalition had almost unlimited resources, while humanity was fighting with whatever they could find. Each victory cost lives they couldn't replace. Meanwhile, aboard a medical research station hidden in the Crab Nebula, Dr. Sam Foster worked frantically on a project that might change the war's outcome. The Cathera healer Melthea sat beside him, her crystal body glowing with concentration as they studied human and Cathera biology together. "The harmonic frequencies your people use for healing," Sam explained. "They work by stimulating cellular regeneration at the molecular level. If we could combine that with human medical technology," Melthea's musical voice carried excitement. "Yes, Dr. Foster, our healing songs could be translated into electronic patterns that human medical equipment could reproduce. Wounds that normally take weeks to heal could be mended in hours." They had been working together for months, sharing knowledge that both species had developed independently. Human scientific methods combined with Cathara intuitive understanding produced breakthroughs neither could achieve alone. "The implications are incredible," Sam continued. "Soldiers could return to battle within days of being wounded. Populations could recover from diseases in record time. We could save millions of lives. But their research facility was discovered by a coalition patrol. Enemy ships surrounded the station, while Sam and Melthea desperately tried to complete their work. They had maybe hours before the attack came. "Melthea, can you teach the healing techniques to other humans if I'm not here to continue the research?" The Cathara's light dimmed with sadness. "Dr. Foster, the knowledge must survive even if we do not. I will transmit everything to your Earth. Scientists, their sacrifice wasn't needed." Commander Lucy Martinez's Ghost Fleet arrived just as coalition forces began their assault on the research station. Her converted civilian ships fought with suicidal bravery to give the scientists time to complete their data transmission. "Ghost Leader to research station," Lucy broadcast as enemy fire lit up space around her ship. "Get that data transmitted now. We can't hold them much longer." The healing technology breakthrough reached human colonies within days. Field hospitals that had been overwhelmed with casualties suddenly found they could treat wounds that would have been fatal. Soldiers who should have died from plasma burns were walking again within a week. More importantly, the collaboration between humans and Cathara inspired other species to take notice. The ethereal void swimmers were ancient beings who rarely spoke to younger races, but they began sending cryptic messages to human commanders with intelligence about coalition fleet movements. The machine species called the Collective started leaving supply caches where human patrols would find them. Weapons, ammunition, and spare parts appeared mysteriously at human bases throughout the war zone. When questioned, Collective representatives claimed the supplies were excess inventory being disposed of. The most significant development came from within the coalition itself. Kethamar was a young Zelani officer serving aboard a coalition battle cruiser when he witnessed something that changed his perspective forever. His ship had cornered a group of Cathara refugees trying to escape in an unarmed transport. "Captain, the crystal ship is broadcasting surrender signals," Kethamar reported from his sensor station. The Vorthak captain laughed coldly. "Zalani, fool, there are no prisoners in this war. Destroy them." Kethmar watched in horror as his ship's weapons vaporized the refugee transport with its cargo of innocent civilians. Hundreds of Kithara families died in an instant, their only crime being the desire to live free from oppression. That night, Kethmar lay in his quarters remembering his own people's history. The Zalani had been independent once, before the Coalition conquered them and forced them to serve as soldiers in other people's wars. His grandfather used to tell stories about the old days when Zalani chose their own destiny. "We were healers, too, in our own way," his grandfather had said. "We grew food that could sustain life on barren worlds. We taught other species how to make dead planets bloom again. Then the Coalition came and turned us into weapons instead of gardeners." Kethmar made a dangerous decision. He began copying Coalition military codes and fleet positions, smuggling the information to human agents whenever possible. Other Zalani officers noticed his change in attitude and quietly asked if he needed help. The rebellion within Coalition ranks started small, but grew quickly. The hive builders had been enslaved for generations, their insectoid workers forced to construct Coalition war machines. When human broadcasts reached their homeworld, promising freedom for all oppressed species, entire factories began sabotaging their own production. On 12 different worlds, client species rose up against their Coalition overlords on the same day. The timing was perfect because human intelligence networks, fed by defectors like Kethmar, knew exactly when and where to strike for maximum effect. Governor Kevin Stone received word of the uprisings while he was still fighting street battles. On New Pittsburgh, Coalition ground forces suddenly found their supply lines cut and their communications jammed by their own former allies. "This is incredible," he told his staff as reports flooded in. "The entire Coalition structure is starting to collapse from within." Commander Lucy Martinez watched Coalition ships retreating from human space as their commanders were recalled to deal with rebellions in their own territory. Her Ghost Fleet had gone from desperate raiders to escort vessels protecting refugee ships filled with fleeing Coalition client species. "All Ghost units, this is Ghost Leader," she broadcast. "Our mission has changed. We're now protecting anyone who wants to escape Coalition oppression, regardless of what species they are." Dr. Sam Foster and Mel Thea found their research facility becoming a medical center for wounded beings of dozens of different species. Human healing technology enhanced by Kithara techniques could help anyone, and word spread quickly through the galaxy's underground networks. "Doctor," Mel Thea observed, "we are witnessing something unprecedented. Species that have been enemies for centuries are working together because they share a common desire for freedom." Sam nodded as he watched a Zalani surgeon working alongside a human medic to save a wounded hive builder. "Maybe that's what humanity brought to this galaxy. Not superior technology or military strength, but the idea that different people can cooperate instead of fighting." The war was far from over, but the momentum had shifted. The war entered a new phase when Kethmar arrived at Unity Base aboard a stolen Coalition destroyer. The young Zalani officer had convinced his entire crew to defect, bringing with them detailed intelligence about Coalition military installations and fleet movements. General Paul Mason met the defectors personally to assess their value to the human cause. "Commander Kethmar," General Mason said as they sat in the base's briefing room, "why should we trust you? This could be an elaborate deception, Kethmar's." Reptilian features showed genuine emotion as he replied, "General, my people have served the Coalition for 300 years because we had no choice. Your species showed us that choice is possible. I bring you the locations of 17 Coalition supply depots and the patrol schedules for their home fleet." The intelligence proved accurate when human strike teams successfully raided the supply depots within days of Kethmar's arrival. More importantly, his defection encouraged other Coalition client species to openly rebel. The hive builders coordinated simultaneous uprisings across their industrial worlds, shutting down weapons production and freeing millions of enslaved workers. Admiral Patricia Cross studied the tactical displays showing rebellion spreading throughout Coalition territory. "General Mason, we have an opportunity here that may not come again. The Coalition is fighting fires on multiple fronts and their reserves are spread thin." General Mason nodded thoughtfully. "You're thinking about Resonance Prime, the Kithara. Homeworld. If we could liberate it, imagine the symbolic impact across the galaxy. Every oppressed species would see that even the Coalition's greatest crimes can be undone. The liberation of Resonance Prime required perfect coordination between human military precision and Cathera harmonic technology. Elder Zethai worked closely with human tacticians to plan an assault that seemed impossible. The planet was defended by massive orbital fortresses and automated defense systems that had kept it locked down for 3 centuries. The Crystal Cities are still alive beneath the surface, Zethai explained to the assembled human commanders. Our homeworld remembers the healing songs even after all these years. If we can get close enough to the surface, we can awaken the planet itself. Captain Julia Rivera commanded the assault fleet that approached Resonance Prime under cover of a coordinated Zalani distraction. Her ships used stealth technology borrowed from the ethereal void swimmers to slip past the outer defenses, while Kethmar's forces staged a fake attack on the opposite side of the system. All units, this is Rivera, she broadcast on encrypted channels. Remember, our job is to get the Kethara healers to the surface. Everything else is secondary. The orbital battle was fierce but brief. Coalition defenders had expected a frontal assault, not the surgical strike that deposited landing craft directly onto the planet's crystal plains. Elder Zethai and 12 other Kethara healers set foot on their ancestral home for the first time in centuries. The moment their crystalline feet touched the ancient ground, something magical happened. The planet itself began to sing, deep harmonic. Frequencies rose from beneath the surface as dormant crystal formations awakened to their people's presence. The Coalition's automated defenses, built on the same crystal technology they had stolen from the Kethara, began malfunctioning as competing. Harmonic patterns disrupted their control systems. By the ancestors, Zethai whispered as crystal spires began emerging from the ground around them. The homeworld remembers us. General Mason watched from orbit as the planet's surface transformed. Crystal cities that had been buried for centuries pushed up through rock and soil, their faceted walls gleaming with renewed life. The Coalition fortresses found their foundations crumbling as the awakening planet rejected their presence. General, Captain Rivera reported, enemy forces are evacuating the surface installations. The planet's own defenses are turning against them. The liberation of Resonance Prime sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. News of the Kethara return spread faster than Coalition sensors could suppress it, inspiring new rebellions on dozens of worlds. But the Coalition's response was swift and brutal. War leader Threxnol, growing desperate as his empire crumbled, authorized the use of weapons that had been banned for centuries. Coalition forces began deploying biological weapons designed to poison entire planets rather than lose them to rebel forces. When that wasn't enough, they started using modified Kethara healing technology to create plagues that targeted specific species. Captain Julia Rivera discovered the Coalition's secret weapon program during a raid on a research facility in the Omega sector. What she found in the laboratory horrified even experienced soldiers. Coalition scientists had perverted the Kethara gift of healing, turning it into an instrument of genocide that could wipe out any species they chose. This is sick, her science officer reported after analyzing the captured data. They've weaponized compassion itself. These plague viruses use the same harmonic frequencies that Kethara healers use to help people, but they're designed to destroy instead of heal. The irony was bitter beyond words. The Coalition had taken the most beautiful aspect of Kethara civilization and twisted it into something monstrous. Worse, intelligence reports indicated they were preparing to deploy the weapon against Earth and all human colonies simultaneously. Captain, her communications officer interrupted, priority message from Admiral Cross. The Coalition is massing their entire home fleet around the Dominion system. Intelligence suggests they're preparing for something big. Julia knew what that something was. The Coalition's fortress world of Dominion Prime contained the central command for all their military operations. If they were gathering their fleets there, it meant they were either planning a final decisive strike or preparing for a last stand. Admiral Cross convened an emergency meeting of all human commanders and their alien allies. The briefing room aboard Unity Station was packed with beings from dozens of different species, all united by their desire to stop Coalition tyranny. Friends, Admiral Cross began, our intelligence indicates that the Coalition is preparing to deploy a galaxy-wide biological weapon. We have perhaps days before they can complete the delivery system. Commander Kethmar stood up from his seat. "Admiral, I know Dominion Prime's defenses. It has never been successfully attacked in 800 years. The fortress world is surrounded by automated defense platforms and protected by energy shields that can stop entire fleets. Then we'll have to do something unprecedented," General Mason replied. "We'll hit them with everything we have at once. Every human ship, every rebel fleet, every ally who can still fight." Elder Zethai's harmonic voice added a musical note to the discussion. "The healing songs that were perverted into weapons still carry their original patterns. If we can get close enough to the Coalition's research facilities, we might be able to reverse the harmony and turn their own weapon against them." Dr. Sam Foster nodded excitedly. "Yes, that could work. Instead of destroying life, we could enhance it, boost immune systems, accelerate healing, even reverse the effects of their previous biological attacks." The plan that emerged was audacious beyond belief. A combined fleet of humans, Kithara, Zalani, hive builders, and dozens of other species would assault the most heavily defended system in Coalition space. Their goal was Ni. The final battle for Dominion Prime lasted 3 days and changed the galaxy forever. War leader Threxnall stood in his command center watching his empire collapse around him as species after species declared independence from Coalition rule. The healing wave that had swept across the galaxy had done more than cure diseases and injuries. It had cured the fear that had kept entire civilizations enslaved for centuries. "Supreme War Leader," his communications officer reported with a shaking voice. "The Saurian High Command has surrendered to rebel forces. They're broadcasting messages of peace to all former enemies." Threxnall looked at the tactical display showing red markers turning green across Coalition space. His own Vorthak fleets were refusing orders to continue fighting. The harmonic healing had affected his people's minds as well as their bodies, washing away the artificial aggression that had been programmed into them for generations. "Sir," another officer called out, "Admiral Morrison is requesting a direct communication channel with you." Jake Morrison appeared on the main screen, older now after years of warfare, but still carrying the determination that had started this entire conflict. Behind him stood Elder Zethai and representatives from dozens of different species. "War Leader Threxnall," Jake began, "your fortress is surrounded and your fleets have surrendered. But we're not here to destroy you. We're here to offer you the same choice you once denied others. Serve the galaxy's future or face the consequences of your past." Threxnall felt strange emotions stirring in his chest. The healing wave had stripped away the conditioning that had made him a perfect warrior, revealing the person he might have been under different circumstances. For the first time in his life, he felt genuine remorse for the suffering he had caused. "Admiral Morrison," he replied slowly, "what exactly are you offering?" Elder Zethai stepped forward, their crystal body glowing with peaceful light. "War Leader, we offer forgiveness to those who choose a new path. The Kithara learned long ago that hatred only breeds more hatred. We prefer to heal rather than harm, even our former enemies. The surrender negotiations took place aboard Unity Station, a massive space platform built around recovered Kithara crystal formations. Representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered to witness the end of the Hegemony Coalition and the birth of something unprecedented, a truly cooperative galactic government. President Helen Burke had traveled from Earth to personally oversee humanity's role in the new order. She sat at a circular table with former enemies and new allies, drafting documents that would govern interstellar relations for generations to come. "The question before us," she addressed the assembly, "is whether we'll repeat the mistakes of the past or build something better. We have a chance to create a galaxy where no species needs to live in fear of conquest or genocide." The Galactic Cooperative Council that emerged from these negotiations was unlike any government the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of being based on military strength or economic dominance, it was founded on the principle that every species had something valuable to contribute to the common good. The Kithara provided healing and wisdom. Humans contributed their talent for innovation and diplomacy. The Zalani offered their skills in agriculture and terraforming. The hive builders shared their expertise in construction and manufacturing. Even former coalition species found roles. In the new order, Threxnall himself chose to join the Council as the representative for reformed military personnel throughout the galaxy. His first act was to establish rehabilitation programs for former Coalition soldiers who had been conditioned for violence since childhood. "We were taught that strength meant domination," he explained to the Council. "Now we must learn that true strength comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves." Admiral Patricia Cross was chosen as the first director of Galactic Security, responsible for coordinating defense against external threats while ensuring that no single species could dominate the others. Her first priority was establishing rapid response fleets that could intervene wherever genocide or oppression raised its head. "Never again," she declared at her inauguration ceremony. "Never again will we allow innocent people to suffer while those with power stand by and do nothing." The transformation wasn't easy or immediate. Centuries of mistrust and hatred couldn't be erased overnight. Some former Coalition hardliners attempted to restart the old wars, while certain rebel groups demanded harsh punishment for their former oppressors. But the healing wave had created something more powerful than political agreements. It had created genuine understanding between species that had never tried to see each other as equals. Dr. Sam Foster and healer Melthea established the Galactic Medical Institute on Resonance Prime, where the greatest medical minds from every species work together to cure diseases and heal wounds, both physical and psychological. Their research combined the best of scientific method with intuitive healing wisdom. "We're not just treating symptoms anymore," Sam explained to visiting dignitaries. "We're healing the trauma that entire civilizations have carried for generations, Commander." Lucy Martinez, now Admiral Martinez, led exploration fleets into previously unknown regions of space. Her mission was to make contact with species that had hidden from galactic civilization during the Coalition's reign of terror. Many worlds that had been considered dead or uninhabited were actually home to people who had been afraid to reveal themselves. "The galaxy is much larger and more diverse than we ever imagined," she reported to the Council. "Every week we discover new species who are ready to join our cooperative rather than face conquest alone." Captain Julia Rivera established the Galactic Rapid Response Force, elite units trained to intervene quickly in crisis situations anywhere in known space. Her ships carried medical supplies, diplomatic teams, and military specialists who could adapt to any emergency. "We learned from humanity's example," she told her diverse crew of humans, Kythera, Zelani, and others. "Sometimes you have to draw a line and defend it, no matter what the cost." 5 years after the Battle of Dominion Prime, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Unity Station and watched ships from hundreds of different species moving peacefully through the space lanes below. Trade vessels carried goods and ideas between former enemy worlds. Medical ships rushed aid to systems facing natural disasters. Exploration fleets ventured into unknown regions, with crews that included representatives from dozens of species. "It's incredible," Elder Zethai observed, joining him at the window. "When we first met in our hiding place among the asteroids, I never imagined this could be possible." Jake smiled and watched a group of young beings from different species playing together in the station's central plaza. Human children laughed alongside young Kythera, whose bodies sparkled with joy. Zelani youngsters shared games with hive builder offspring, while their parents conducted business together. "You know what the real victory was," Jake said thoughtfully. "It wasn't defeating the Coalition or even stopping their genocide weapon. It was proving that different people can work together when they choose cooperation over conquest." The memorial wall near the observation deck listed the names of everyone who had died in the war. Humans, Kythera, Zelani, hive builders, and even reformed Coalition soldiers who had given their lives for the cause of freedom. Their sacrifice had created something unprecedented, a galaxy where diversity was celebrated rather than feared. President Burke, now in her final term, had come to Unity Station for the 5th anniversary of the armistice. She stood before the memorial and read aloud from the Galactic Cooperative Charter. "We, the free peoples of the galaxy, unite not in conquest, but in cooperation. We pledge to protect the weak, heal the wounded, and ensure that no species shall face extinction, while others have the power to help. We draw this line not in sand but in stars, Beyond this point, tyranny shall not pass. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching billions of beings who lived in peace because a handful of humans had decided that genocide was unacceptable. Children who had never known war listened to stories about the dark times when the coalition ruled through fear and oppression. War leader Threxnal, now known simply as Counselor Threx, spoke at the ceremony about the importance of remembering the past while building a better future. His transformation from conqueror to protector had inspired millions of former soldiers to find new purposes in civilian life. "We cannot change what we were," he said in his address, "but we can choose what we become. The galaxy gave us a second chance, and we must prove worthy of that gift." As the ceremony ended and delegates returned to their home worlds, Jake Morrison remained on the observation deck, watching the stars. He thought about that day 5 years ago when he had first encountered the Cathara refugees and made the choice that changed everything. "Commander," Elder Zeth High said softly, "do you ever regret the decision you made?" Jake shook his head and smiled. "Never. We drew a line in space and said that innocent people deserved protection. Looking at what we built together, I'd make the same choice again without hesitation." The galaxy had learned an important lesson that would be remembered for generations. Sometimes it takes a species willing to stand up for what's right, no matter the odds, to remind everyone else what civilization really means.